Good morning. Welcome to Wellness Wednesday. I'm Jen Rico and I'm with Caridad Gardens, always trying to humanize the homeless. We are having a special guest today. Some of you may be familiar with her face. It's my boss, my friend, my mentor, Merideth. She is experiencing some back pain, so we kind of want to just discuss pain management. We know there's a lot of people out there, especially because of the quarantine, that may be experiencing some pain, especially from lack of movement. Some of that could be an added amount of stress, whether you have children or don't have children, school, no school, work, no work, virtual, not virtual. It seems like everybody's dealing with some kind of issue, possibly even being cooped up with your significant others. It can be stressful. So welcome, Merideth.
Thank you.
How are you today?
Good, thank you. I'm actually in horrible pain, but I'm okay. I'm happy to be here, so thank you for having me on.
Yes, so I have experienced pain. I actually have had big back pain in my life. I hurt my back in college my freshman year and then felt remnants of that throughout my entire softball career. And so because of that, that kind of led me into researching, experimenting with pain management, because it was something that I looked for help from multiple doctors, multiple pills, multiple foods, yoga, everything. And it really kind of encompassed my entire life when I was in back pain. So for me specifically, I understand that there's a language of pain too, because it really is something that can kind of feel like it's overwhelming. It kind of can be that dark shadow over you, and kind of just almost take you into anxiety and depression, I know for me. So can you kind of share what your experience is with pain?
Sure.
and where it started and kind
Sure.
of where you are now?
So I played tennis my whole life, so I have kind of funky knees that crack and whatever, but I actually don't have pain in them, surprisingly, even though I've chipped my kneecaps and everything. And perfectly pain-free and really healthy until I guess it's been now almost 4 years ago. Got hit by a drunk driver. Actually was leaving from a hike, and for those of you familiar with Las Vegas, I was out at the Albertsons by Red Rock, and I had struggled to get Cell out there, but so the way he hit me, he thought I was going out of that lot. Let's see, that would be headed westward. I was pulling up to C. He mistakenly thought I was going to go, so he basically just floored it and hit me so hard my car came up and down, and so that's what the actual pain is from. I was turned like this looking, and because of how it slammed the car down, it kind of crunched my back up. And so even though I've done chiropractic and therapy and stuff, it's so much better. It is getting better. But I had lower bulge discs. I was afraid because it was a horrible crunch in my neck and I couldn't move and hardly do anything. I was afraid I'd done something seriously wrong to my neck, but thankfully that all got adjusted. I couldn't do more than like this to open or close my mouth at the time. Over time, obviously I can talk. I'm just fine, as everybody can tell. But so yeah, I went through all that therapy. And then now really the only time I experience pain is if I sit or I stand for too long. It used to be I could only get about a half an hour in of just sitting, or even like very little standing. But so that tends to be what happens if I let it go. So I've been doing inactivity, so it's my fault. I just was traveling. But so to sit and do nothing for a few days, plus traveling and sitting on a plane for all those hours at a time, my back is just a mess. And so I was joking, I gotta chug this. But yeah, I got like maybe 2 or 3 hours sleep last night because of the pain level. And for me, I don't like to take anything. I'm actually prescribed 7 different things between the muscle relaxers and the pain pills. And I do have prescriptions for heavy pain pills, but I just didn't like how they made me feel.
Exactly.
Yeah. So for me, it's just never been an option, and tried to go holistically instead of doing all those nasty pills.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because my experience with pain led me into working with people with pain, which I thought was very interesting because there's different triggers. Like you were saying, for some people it's lack of movement, some people it could be added stress. And when I say stress, sometimes I mean stress. It could be a wedding, right? A birth of a child. There's little things that we don't always understand as far as stress and how it weighs heavy onto our body. Usually if it has to do with the back, it has to do with the central nervous system, which unfortunately has to do with everything that we do, because our central nervous system literally is like the mainframe computer of our body. So for you, you might notice other things. Like for instance, if it was that part of the neck, you might notice tingling and numbness in the hand. Like you were saying, a lot of restriction in the jaw, which can cause TMJ. I know for me, what I started doing was grinding.
Same.
And
Same.
actually what I do is clench. My dentist noticed that it wasn't that I was grinding or moving it, but that I was clenching
I do
it.
that too.
And it was creating fissures in my teeth, and so my teeth would start falling out.
Yeah.
So it was really interesting how just a lower back injury could create all of this, other places, which obviously if you've had dental work, or if you've been in pain in your mouth, you know that literally that can sink you for your whole day, because it has to do with your talking and your eating and your drinking, and you can't get away from that. And so for some people, I know for me, I tried pain medicine, but when you see that it's a chronic condition, you're like, how long can I really go taking this type of medicine? So have you found any holistic ways that help you besides movement?
Yeah, and the other thing, and I have to fess up that I did it, I never eat sugar because I'm super sensitive to it, but I had all the desserts and all the things the past few days, but sugar, even in fruits, can cause inflammation.
Right.
And so I have to be careful even what fruits I eat, because it can give me grief and I can feel it. So not only did I have my inactivity, but I ate sugary fruits, cakes and different things. Even though I'm gluten-free, I found all the goodies and ate all of them.
Right.
So it's just that inflammation, and even dairy.
Yeah.
I had dairy and I'm not supposed to eat dairy.
Right.
So I literally did everything I could wrong. So it's not a surprise to me that my back hurts.
Right.
But I love CBD. I'm a big fan of CBD, and I think we're going to have some friends on that are manufacturers. But for me, it's been really relief in CBD. And I use the tincture. So for those people that are not familiar with CBD, when I'm throwing that out there, people get it confused often with THC or marijuana. And depending on the extractor, now generally in Nevada, I can speak to this, it's coming from the hemp plant. So completely different plants. It's not coming from marijuana. They're in the same family, but completely different. So there's no THC. CBD is legal in all 50 states. And I take the tincture, and then you take it under your tongue, and what happens, and I've seen this all the time with people with CBD and they take the tinctures, is they don't know, and they just squeeze it and drink it and nothing happens. Well, because it's such a mild pain reliever, you actually have to put it under your tongue, hold it for about 10 seconds, then you can swallow, and you'll get more out of that absorption. But so yeah, for me, CBD has been what's really helped. So like a day like today, I would barely be able to move. I wouldn't be able to sit unless I would have taken my CBD in the morning. And so I take my CBD. That's not ideal that I would get up to this pain level, but still it makes me function. And then also getting back to moving for me, I've got some stretches and like yoga stuff that I do. But then also for me, and this is me personally, I've done chiropractic.
Right.
So for me, it's the adjustments and things like that, and even massage. Massage helps me a lot.
Yeah, I can be in agreement. I recently just, in the end of last year, ruptured my ACL, and immediately I have a chiropractor that I see that is a functional medicine doctor that helps me kind of coexist in this world because of the injuries and trauma that I've had on my body. But that was the first thing that he introduced was tinctures of CBD oil, sublingually underneath the tongue, and then I also
sublingually. I couldn't think of the
Yeah.
word. I was tired.
So if under the tongue, it actually goes right into the bloodstream, which most people will go through the mouth, and that actually goes through your digestion, so it takes a little longer. Yeah, so that was interesting. But he also gave me it looked like a little deodorant stick, and so I rubbed that all on my knee when I was healing and icing. So I would do that multiple times a day. And didn't experience any pain actually. I was working at Lifetime Fitness, as a trainer, and some of the guys that were there were MMA fighters, which we all know get banged up pretty bad, and a lot of them tear their knees, shoulders, and so we had a vibrational machine there, and everyone just pointed me in that direction and said, just go there and move, your body will tell you what to do. And I started, moving on there, just like, bending and standing because my range of motion was limited. But between the CBD oil and the vibration, noticed within a month that I had almost all of my range of motion back with no pain, which was huge because I know being an athlete, for me, everything is dependent on how I can move pain-free. And so the CBD oil was something that was new that I had never tried. Vibration was something new that I had never tried. So I always encourage people with pain that you need to think out of the box. So listen to the wisdom of some of the other people who've had pain, where they've been, what they've done. I know for me in the past, what I used was aromatherapy, which is something that we'll probably introduce later on in our wellness show as well. Because for me, my pain was so bad that I couldn't be touched. So for some people, like massage will work. For some people, they actually have so much pain that touching them sends them into kind of more of a constricted feeling, and that actually tightens on the nerves, and so it actually creates more inflammation. So I felt trapped in my own body. And so what I noticed was that when people were doing oils on my feet, your feet have the largest pores in your body. And so just like underneath your tongue, it goes immediately into your bloodstream. And so when I started putting the oils on my feet, what it would do is it would send a signal to my nervous system immediately to kind of relax. And so then they would start doing foot reflexology, which they hit all those points that they needed to hit in my body through my feet. And so I started feeling less pain. And so they never even touched my body, which I thought was huge. So that led me to acupuncture, which is another key modality that I think people need to remember, that it could be a combination of Western and Eastern medicine. You know, I definitely think that Western medicine has come a long way to opening up its borders as far as what its beliefs are, because it's funny that to me, to get someone to feel good doesn't necessarily have to be a belief system as much as if it works, then I don't care if I believe in it or not, I want to feel better.
Absolutely. And what was I going to say? For me, it's cold too. So cold ice packs instead of hot works better. And then even back to the CBD, I always tell people to consult your doctor too, because I'm not a doctor, I'm not a medical professional, and you don't want it to interact badly if you are on prescription meds, so just double check. But also the other word of advice is make sure that you know where you get your CBD from, because right now, because it's legal in all 50 states and doesn't have any real regulation, your gas station CBD might not have CBD in it, might just have like weird oils and things and fillers. So in cases where marijuana is legal, you're actually better to get it at the dispensary, because that goes through rigorous testing and you know you're getting what you're paying for. It might cost you more, but you're going to get the real thing. So that would be my advice to anybody out there that's looking to buy. I'm going to just do a little shout out. Canna Hemp is a company that's online. They're 100% legit, and they have creams and tinctures and different things, and they're wonderful too. But I never tried the acupuncture. Back to what you were saying about acupuncture. But yeah, I thought about it when I first got in my accident. I was just so desperate for any relief. I mean, even last night it was hurting me to lay in the bed. You know, that pain level had gotten so high. So yeah, I was at that point where I'm like, just tell me what I need to do to not feel like this.
I was pregnant with my third, Lola, and I hadn't had back pain, you know, through any of my pregnancies, and it triggered my trauma from when I got my college injury. And so if you've had pain and you get out of pain, when it comes back, you can literally go into panic attacks, which creates anxiety and depression. And so I couldn't stand up, which was the symptom of when I had first got hurt. And all I could think of was, I cannot be pregnant with this kind of pain. I had already had 2 children. There is no way I'm going to carry a child with that much pain. And I just remember we were eating something at a restaurant, and I walked by an Oriental medicine like doctor, and I just remember looking and thinking, I'm going to try this. I walked in, talked to someone, they did acupuncture like right there, and I walked out pain-free. Like, I didn't understand it. I didn't know what I was doing. I have no clue how this all happened. I felt like it was the universe and the clouds parting, right? But it was one of those things where I'm a science person, so I like to know the whys. So if you know me and you know my wellness background, you know I do a lot of research, and I always want to know why things are working. This was at that moment where I was like, I could care less what you do, what you say, you could have put the needle between my eyes. As long as that pain is gone, I was fine. So it was interesting how I didn't need to get philosophical or scientific about it. I just knew that I was having pain and I didn't want it anymore. So I always encourage people to even think out of the box of themselves. Because I know right now, a new thing too is Cbd oil massages. So I'm thinking, oh, well, that would be incorporating some of the same things that you were speaking of with the CBD used as an oil, right? Topical oil that would immediately go into your skin is your largest organ. So that would go into your bloodstream, but with, you know, massage and how that could really probably bring some relief for some people. So yeah, it's interesting. I'm always excited to see some of the cutting edge therapies that are out there? Because I know there's like, do they call it cryotherapy with cold?
Yeah, I wanted to try that when I got my accident, and then my husband scared me off because I don't know if you remember, for those of you out there watching, if you're from Las Vegas, you might remember this happened in the news. But there was a girl that got frozen in there.
Oh gosh.
She was doing it after hours. She was an employee and got locked in, and because she was the only one there, she couldn't get herself out, and so she froze to death. So it's like right after that, I had my accident. Was thinking about doing it. I'm so bad about taking care of my body, I think, in general. But I had to go to a conference in LA with our other service providers here from Las Vegas, and I was just miserable. I mean, I could barely sit, stand, walk, anything, but stretching and wearing high heels, as crazy as that sounds. I think it was because of how the angle was doing something different with my back, but were the only things that felt better. So it's funny, I go to this conference, and I'm in these high-heeled boots, and I have to keep getting up or sitting on the floor and moving all around and whatever. So I just look completely like a crazy person. And thank goodness at the federal level they all know me, so they didn't even bat an eye. It was just me being me. But I was just in horrible pain and trying to relieve it. So I almost went because I was in LA and did cryotherapy because I'm like anything, because it just hurts so bad. I was just on fire.
Right. Well, and even with the LV Bar Stars, with the organization that I work out with and that offers the Wellness Wednesday workouts, I've learned a lot from the guys because they get very sore with what they're doing, you know, as far as pull-ups, muscle-ups. And so I know a lot of them do the cupping, which is something that we saw with the U.S. Olympic swim team. You could see the marks on their bodies. So that's something I know I haven't tried, that I definitely would be willing to look into. I know for me, I really like infrared sauna because I don't like cold weather. Cold weather makes me hurt, which is interesting, and that's why I always tell people. But I mean, the cold
feels good on me. I don't like it, but it feels good.
Well, and that's what I'm saying is that, you know, you always want to remember that your pain journey may not be like someone else's. So when you're trying something, remember that this is your journey, right? And I always feel like that journey leads you to more information about your own body. So even though I've had the pain, what it's done for me to learn about all of these therapies, even with experiences and places that I've gone to learn new things, and the people that I've met through that, it's interesting how that journey, even though it was kind of pain and suffering, has brought me so many great relationships and modalities that now I help and share with others, which kind of leads us into the Wellness Wednesday of how that we want to share these things with not just our vets, you know, the people that we work with, not just our family, but with all the people that show up online and probably are suffering from these same issues.
Yeah.
So.
And Elizabeth Grandel of the Grandel Method, who used to work for us and you've had on, I got to train with her, and because she's lived with chronic pain too, she was wonderful at helping me and tailoring workouts to strengthen my lower back and help me. So she did amazing work with me and just getting me to where I'm at now, to where, oh my goodness, I went, you know, basically 3 days without activity and ate trash, and now I'm in pain, whereas before I couldn't even do 30 minutes, you know, of no activity. So so Elizabeth helped, but that was, again, tailored specifically for me and what I needed to strengthen in my lower back.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and it's funny that you brought up the traveling thing, because I travel a lot with my kids, and I have little lacrosse balls tucked into my side doors, because for me, a lot of that is hip. Now that I've had kids, my hips are they can get tight, and so when I sit too long, you'll notice that I will stand up and I'll move, and I'm like you, where I feel like I look wacko, but most people that know me are just knowing that I don't like to sit, not because I can't, you know, stay calm. It's just that my body really likes movement. And so for me, it's interesting. I've always looked at movement because I know I do a lot of power moves, but I also do a lot of slow movement and breathing. And so I've turned a lot of my movement into meditation. And so I really focus on connecting to the part that's in pain, because I've learned through yoga, through Pilates, through a lot of Eastern medicine, that we have these energy channels in our body. And so I always look at that pain of like, is it coming from my shoulder, that's kind of a heart issue, like what's going on with my life, how are my relationships? And so as I'm doing some like slow movement and really opening up the areas that are tight, I really focus on breathing, because everything in Eastern medicine is something emotional that comes from those center chakras that we're dealing with. It could be a loss of a friend. It could be a marriage dissolving. It could be a child that's missing.
Better not be. Next week, if you're out there, our marriage better not be dissolving. You're in trouble, buddy.
Right. But, just life events, circumstances, losing a job. When I look at people too, I think losing a job, those root chakras of finance, home, just feeling rooted, right? So if you're not feeling connected with your community, maybe you moved somewhere and you're new to the valley, right? Those things can actually start to manifest as pains if we don't unlock some of that emotional trauma and kind of deal with that. And when I say deal with that, just breathe into it and feel that emotion of sadness or pain or grief or, whatever it is. So, and those for me, with my relationship with pain, have been probably the hardest things to relate to, because I move. That's just what I do well. And so the breathing really makes me become in tune with the emotions that I am constantly moving through life. So how busy I always am, that I move through life to try to avoid some of the feelings that I'm feeling. And so for me, pain is just a reminder that I need to sit in my own emotions and sometimes feel that and experience that. And it's painful sometimes to feel sadness or grief or anger or frustration, and allow that to just exist in your life and know that this too shall pass, right?
Interesting that you say that, because I was just saying, for me, I'd been going nonstop, but very regimented too. So I get up, I wake up really early, everybody out there. So I wake up really early and start working. And then at sunrise, I usually take a break. I work out, I do whatever. And then I get on into my day, and then I come to the office and deal with all that. And so I'm very structured. And I've been going full throttle with that schedule 7 days a week, because I've been on some deadlines here. And then to have really 2 days to do nothing, I think my body just fell apart too. I think it's partially because I've been pushing it so hard that it finally probably took a minute to be like,
it caught up with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also when we're talking about different things at work, Jenny and I were just talking about this. She loves celery juice and can do celery juice every day and gets great relief from it. I could do it and I would be horribly sick. And so you just have to find out what's working for you. And like how I was saying, fruits are an inflammatory, and I have to be careful, but even like gluten or just any type of bread in any form is a huge inflammatory for me, and things like peanuts and different things. It's not an allergy, but it's an inflammatory food for me. And so also paying attention to your body, things like brain fog or sleepiness, it might be your diet. It might be something in your diet. Your pain might be related to foods you're eating. And like I said, when I don't eat sugar and when I'm really strict on it, I usually do pretty strict keto. I don't generally do dairy unless I'm on vacation. But generally when I stick to that strict keto, no dairy, I don't have pain like this. So I think it's really that combo.
Well, and it's interesting that you bring that up too, because I obviously have 4 children. I've tried to raise them very clean, because of my background of having holistic nutrition in there. It's like once you know information, you can't unknow it. So none of them had sugar their first year of life. They were all nursed, just little things that I could do to kind of start them out on the right foot. But, I have teenage girls now in the house, and it's so interesting. Last night, one of my daughters made a meal, and like one of them likes spicy, one of them doesn't. One of them likes to just eat, just plain potatoes and carrots and then like salt and pepper chicken. The other one wants the sauce, and, and so it's really interesting how each one of them has now this opinion about food, where I used to feed them very rigidly as they were little, and we start to develop our own likes and dislikes. Some of them that hurt us, because I know my daughter Lola is the same way with cheese and dairy. It's something that she's drawn to, and so I'm always reminding her that remember what the consequences are. I'm not telling you, because a lot of this stuff, there's no guarantee that we're going to be able to say no, but you have to remember the consequences that will come with that, as far as days possibly with pain, acne, just indigestion, constipation. Like, those are the things that you really have to think, is this worth it? And for sometimes it is. Like you said, you went and saw your friends, we go on holidays, we go on breaks, and there's times where it's okay to eat the bread because I'm gonna take it.
Well, and she's plant-based.
Yeah.
So she's plant-based, which kind of naturally, just based on what you're eating, it's a kind of a more higher sugar diet.
Mm-hmm.
The sweets were all on me. I brought those in the house, but
Right.
but so just naturally when I'm eating her food, it's naturally higher in sugar, and even things like carrots that people don't think about. Carrots have sugar.
High sugar.
Yeah. And so different things like that I normally would watch, but I ate everything out there.
Which was interesting because I remember a shout out to my coach at Baylor University, Paula. She had horses, and we were feeding the horses, and she was talking about that they didn't feed them carrots as often because they were high sugar.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really interesting because that was back before my nutritional, education, and I just remember thinking, what? Even the horse doesn't get that many carrots? Oh yeah. And so they were talking about, that the levels of sugar were just too high, that they couldn't feed that to them constantly. So
Same
that
with
was
apples. Apples are
apples
really,
too.
really high in sugar.
Yeah. So it's interesting, even animals, that they can't have that every single day, all day, but it seems to be those staple foods that we give kids. So to me, I'm like, are we setting them up sometimes?
Well, it's different, and what I've learned, and I can by no means credit myself as a gardener, but through our gardening programs, what I have learned too, like an heirloom seed versus what you get in the store because it's been bred to be sweeter or taste a certain way, is so different than when you get like something that's bred and grown the way it's supposed to be grown.
Right.
And it's mind-blowing to try the different veggies and produce that we're growing versus the store-bought ones.
Well, and that's crazy that you said that, because if you've been following us, last week we went on our farm tour with Farmer Mark. And he picked some carrots for us.
Yeah.
So we actually went and did a stir fry a couple nights later and washed the carrots and cooked them. And they were not as sweet as they normally were when we're used to having them and that was something that we all noticed, was that the carrot was definitely not as sweet as the carrots that we buy, like perfectly bagged and cut for you.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting, which also I would promote. And I know with Mark, he was talking about that people, it's so easy for people to get whatever they want at the corner market.
He's talking about that picking the harvest.
Yeah. And how coming out and harvesting, sometimes because you have to drive and because it doesn't look as pretty, right? Or that you have to work for it and it's hot, there's different things, but that it's actually a better quality source of food. And I really think that there's something spiritual or universal or godly, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, about getting your hands in the soil and actually physically seeing and doing, like with the earth. I don't know what it is, but I definitely know there's a difference. And I see it in our vets with how they work with the gardens and the flower beds.
If we could just get them to eat their greens.
Right. But that's what I'm saying, it's a start.
Some of them are,
it's a start that they're touching them. Because like I said, when I see some of my vets that come to work, at least in my end, when they're stressed, I actually assign them to go work on the flower beds, and they always come back a little calmer, a little more peaceful, a little well put together. So I really think that there's something to that. So
a side note too, when you're talking about your vets, there's one of her employees that has horrible pain, and I said, hey, I think it's sugar and whatever, and so she quit eating pasta and breads and things for almost 2 weeks and had little to no pain, and she has arthritis in her back. And then she said, I just can't take it. I gotta have my pasta and my breads. And immediately, almost that same day when she ate it, she had back to the pain.
Right.
And it was crazy. I'm like, why would you do that? But I get it. I just cheated, and I made a case right here for doing all the wrong things.
Well, it's interesting because when I got into holistic nutrition, when I was studying it, it was for me because I was dealing with so many issues with my digestion. It was just to heal myself first, kind of like my back pain. And then I started working for chiropractors, naturopaths, doing nutritional counseling, and boy, is nutrition an emotional component to people.
It's like a religion.
Oh my goodness.
I just quit telling people.
Well, and culturally, right?
I'm trying to help people.
You're getting stuff passed down from families, from cultures. So there's a story tied into, what they're eating, and man, to unravel some of that, just, hey, did you realize your symptoms got better? Maybe that's something you don't want to include, or maybe it's a sometimes food. And that's what I've learned to do is with some people, I know they're not going to cut it out.
Yeah.
And so, okay, well, let's just make it a sometime food so that they don't feel so, I almost feel like you're taking their blankie away from them, right? Because they're literally comfort foods.
Oh, yeah.
So when you tell them that they shouldn't have it, it almost like it triggers them to eat more of it.
Oh, people get on the defense for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. So I always say, well, this is sometimes food,
Yeah.
right? And negotiate that. Like if you know that you're going to have a little bit of pain, know that it may not be something that you do when you don't want to have that pain, you know. And so you always lead yourself into, where am I going to be in the next day, the next 2 days? How is that going to affect my body? And if I don't need the energy, or I am going to be resting, maybe it is a thing you can negotiate. Maybe it's not. So. Well, I know for me, my pain has become more manageable, so I want to give you hope out there. There's lots of resources. I'm sure there's ways that you can ask Merideth questions. You can ask us questions. We're always trying to bring resources to you for different ways for pain modification, whether that's a physical pain, a mental pain, or a spiritual pain. And so we just want to wish you well out there. Thank you for showing up, Merideth. It's always such a great pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for showing up to Wellness Wednesday. We hope that you're pain-free.
Bye, everybody, except I'm going to hop around because I'm the camera lady. Hold on. Bye! Oh, no, did this stop filming? Because it timed out? Ah! It totally stopped filming.
Oh, which one was that?
That's the Instagram, but I can upload it from this other. That sucks. Dang it.
Go. What time? Oh yeah, we did 10:30. I was like, there's the clock right there.
You're good, lady.
Okay, I'm gonna run down because I wanted to meet John. He's going to.
I didn't know Ricky has